Guys, Standard Lifestyle, we're going to build a roof rack for my project Roverlander. The roof rack that's on it now came with the Rover, and I'm sure it would work great for a lot of people, but there's a few different issues that I have with it. First issue, and this is a big one, I have a YouTube channel where I teach people how to fabricate, and I did not fabricate this part of the Rover, so I want to update it to where it's a little bit more my style. That brings me to number two. I don't like the style and overall shape of the roof rack. I think that I could do a little bit better, at least make an attempt to, and I just want to change things to where it fits my sensibilities a little bit better. Third big reason is that I want to be able to fit a rooftop tent on this, and the way this was designed, it would be kind of hard to fit a rooftop tent on it safely. So rooftop tents are going to be a must for me in the future, especially with the family, and I want to make sure that I build something that can meet this criteria. Whoever built this rack did a pretty decent job at making these tie-ins. Looks like they're made from scratch. I'm definitely impressed. They look heavy duty, and I plan on reusing them. So basically, I'm gonna pull this rack off, I'm gonna lob it off right there, and then I'm gonna try and reuse these tie-in points that are already made. It's engineering that I don't have to deal with, so I might as well take advantage. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some measurements of the rack and take some measurements of the roof so I can build a template on the floor. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know I'm a big fan of fabricating in this method. There's a few reasons for that. I think that in this build specifically, having to tack and build everything up in the air on a ladder would be a huge pain. Whereas if I have everything marked out on the floor, I literally have a flat surface sitting there that I can lay things on as I tack them together, and it's just gonna be so much more forgiving. Not to mention dropping something and having it scuff your paint or even break a window. Who knows? There's 3 windows on the roof of this thing. So instead of taking those risks, I'm just gonna build it right on the floor on a template that I make that I'm measuring for right now. I already picked up the material for this project. Don't mind the big sticky tires. Those are for a different project altogether. I'm gonna use steel. We're gonna use 1.5 inch welded pipe, and we're gonna be using some 1/8 inch plate. You'll see where and why I use different materials throughout the process, but basically aluminum would be awesome for this, and it is way more money. So in order to keep costs down, I decided to use steel. If it ends up being too heavy, then in the future I can always build one out of aluminum. You guys know aluminum is definitely my thing. We'll see. Hopefully this will work out. The shape of the roof of the Land Rover is gonna make this roof rack a little bit complicated, and there's reasons for that. I like the look of 2 stacked pieces of tube right on top of each other, basically throughout the whole perimeter of the rack. And that's gonna make this really tall because the front of the Land Rover is at a normal roof line, and then for more headroom, they made the back of the Land Rover go up a little bit. So there's gonna be some interesting shapes that we're gonna have to overcome with good design. We'll see what I can do. I think it's really easy to make a bad looking roof rack, and I think it's really hard to make a good looking roof rack. And whenever you're piling that on top of the fact that this is a Land Rover Discovery, so it's just kind of weird looking from the get-go, we definitely have a lot on our plate today. I don't want to make this rack too tall, and that's gonna be a big challenge. If you look at Google Images and you type in Land Rover roof rack, you're gonna see a whole bunch of super tall roof racks, and it's got all this gear up there, and don't get me wrong, it looks very Land Rover, but I wanna try and squat this rack down as low as possible. Because of that, I'm basically gonna have 1 piece of tube around the back half of the roof and then 2 pieces of tube around the front half. This looks all right in my mind. We're gonna have to see. I'm incorporating 2 different types of benders. I'm incorporating some square shapes with some round shapes. We're just gonna have to see how this turns out. This is our basic template that we're gonna use to build this roof rack. Right now, we are standing at the back of the roof rack, and then the front of the roof rack is gonna be right here. I've got a bunch of elements that I wanna work into this. We've got some really nice lights from Baja Designs over there in boxes. So we're gonna be incorporating some new lighting, and I want to use this to be a mount for a future rooftop tent. I got online and I looked around and saw how rooftop tents mount, and based on the measurements and stuff that I saw on your average rooftop tent, this should work perfect. And it's gonna be good and stout. We're gonna probably have 3 crossbars going across the middle here, and those crossbars are gonna be out of that rectangular tubing. So this is gonna be a crossbar here, there's gonna be one here, and then I wanna take a measurement of where the front sunroof is before I decide where the front crossbar is gonna go. I have a chunk of smaller tube here, and this is gonna be used as an internal sleeve. There's gonna be a whole lot of bends that we're gonna be dealing with today, and we do compound bends, meaning there's a whole bunch of bends in one piece of material. It gets really easy to have things not end up being true. So we would set our finished work on the ground and it would be all out of whack. But if we use this sleeve on the inside, then we can make cuts in between bends if they get out of whack, and then I can just weld it up. Well, we can clock it and then weld it up and correct our mistake. got a couple bends that I laid down on the template, and as you can see, I just made a mark that was literally halfway between this line and that line, and that's how I knew where to cut these two pieces of tube. And then I cut the tube because, again, I want to use sleeves where it makes sense. This is one of those situations where 1 degree difference between here and here could turn into, 2 or 3 inches by the time you get all the way down to the end. So it's so much easier to just bend a 90 on one piece, a 90 on the other piece, cut it, sleeve it, and weld it. So this sleeve is 10 inches. I just measured to the halfway point. It's a very nice snug fit. I'm gonna weld it here, and then I'll put the other side on, and I'll weld it there whenever I'm ready. But before I do all that, I need to make 2 more bends. So what I'm gonna do is a 45-degree bend, I believe, right here. I have these pre-bent sections of tubing that I write different, notes on. And basically the way I do this is I measure the way I want this to be, or I just kind of hold it where I want it to be. And then I made marks on the ground that is gonna be where I'm gonna put a certain part on my machine that's gonna bend it from there. So that way I can make a mark from here to here, and then I can put this up on the machine, and it's gonna make it easy to have a predictable bend. I haven't been super clear about my plan for this roof rack. So I wanted to lay out these lights on the floor so you kind of look at it and get an idea of what I'm going for here. I still have a bar that's gonna go over the top here, and it's gonna basically be some sort of a nice finish that's gonna go right over the top of these new lights. These are the lights that I was talking about earlier from Baja Designs. These look 100 times better than those weird square lights that are on the Land Rover right now. Now I wanna be super clear. I don't know anything about lighting, but everybody I talk to says that Baja Designs makes a really nice light, so I definitely look forward to hooking them up and trying them out. Now to bend this bar, I've got a bar that's gonna have a nice big radius up here, and then I've got one that's gonna go under the light to mount. And obviously with that, you can't use a tubing bender, you have to use a tubing roller. So I have this brand new tool that I just got from Swag Off-Road, and this is a tubing roller. What this will allow us to do is put a really long radius, as long as you want. We could make a radius that goes around the entire shop if we wanted to. And so this will give us this nice contoured look that's gonna match the shape of our windshield channel. And right now, you're gonna watch me try it out for the first time. My plan for making this bend is very simple. I'm gonna measure from one side to the other, and I'm gonna double that measurement and make one uniform bend and then cut it in half. I think that's gonna be easier than cutting like a 5-foot section, bending it, and then cutting another 5-foot section and trying to match the first bend. Now there is a dial indicator on this machine to make it easier to replicate bends, but if I don't have to replicate bends, that will make this a much easier process in my opinion. I'm not gonna get too picky about the angle of the bend. I want it to come close to matching the angle of the windshield, but if it's off a little bit, I'm not gonna sweat it. The whole point is that because it's rounded, it's gonna match the look of the windshield much better than if it's just 2 bars that are straight across. This is the first time you guys have seen me use one of these on the channel. I usually notch all my tube and pipe with an angle grinder and a cutoff wheel, but this is a pretty extreme angle, so it's gonna be a little bit easier to start it with the tube notcher. So we're gonna notch the tube and it'll be close to what we need, and then I'll just clean it up with the angle grinder and a grinding disc. For those of you that don't know what a tubing notcher is, it's a very basic device. These aren't very expensive. I believe I got this one on Amazon. In any case, I will put a link to one just like it in my Amazon cart that I put down in the description, and that way you guys can easily find it. They usually run about like 80 bucks, something like that, and it's pretty handy. I think that for this kind of situation, it is perfect. With the majority of our notching done, I am ready for the next step. I need to cap these off before I get too far, because I think that trying to cap those off once this is all tacked is gonna be a little bit more complicated. So I'm gonna do it very simple. I think I'm gonna use an 1 3/8 hole saw. I'm going to drill a bunch of 1 3/8 holes, and then the cookie that's stuck in the saw, I'm just gonna place it in that hole, tack it together, and then weld it up. The big bummer is my nice drill press has a broken belt. I have it on order, but this is a very old model, and it's a very weird belt, so I'm not gonna be able to use it for this. But I do have this smaller drill press. It is powerful enough to do small hole saws. It just takes a little bit extra time. Hopefully the camera's gonna be able to focus on this, but this is our finished result. So I just welded the cookie onto the end of this tube and then ground it down and polished it up a little bit with emery cloth. And this is the finished result. I think it looks halfway decent. Once I throw some paint on there, it won't look bad at all. All right, this is looking kind of funky. It's every cool thing I've ever built has been by taking risks. We're taking some risks here today. We've got some strange shapes that we're working with. I'm hoping that once we start to bolt on lights and some different things, it'll start to look a little bit better. So what we're gonna be looking at now is I wanna put a plate here that is going to solidify the relationship between this piece and this piece. And I want to use some dimple dies, and we're going to drill a whole bunch of holes, which is going to suck because I have only the use of my small drill press right now, and drilling holes is like the most mindless thing ever. So I'm going to grab the material I need. I'm going to start marking it out and punching a whole bunch of holes in this material. The material that I'm using for this is some 6-inch wide by 1/8-inch thick flat bar. This material is perfect for this job, and I'm actually starting to buy this in 20-foot lengths because I use this material a lot these days. It seems like I'm starting to use 1/8-inch for a ton of different projects. This is a great example on when it's good to use it. I don't need 1/4-inch, I don't need 3/8, I don't need something super thick for this purpose. I just need something that is gonna cover a wide span that I can put some different holes in, put some dimple dies in to give it a little bit of strength and give it a nice off-road look. My least favorite thing to do in fabrication is definitely drilling holes. So what I usually do is I put in some earbuds, I have a podcast going, because I know that especially with having to use my smaller drill press, this is gonna take me maybe a couple hours to drill all the holes I need for both sides. This is gonna take a long time. But at the end of the day, it's very much worth it. I want this to look good when it's all done. I want it to be very strong, and this piece is gonna be very crucial for both. My brother came over real quick and gave me a hand pulling off that old rack. So I decided to stack them side by side so I could lay out these lights. I'm not sure on a height yet. I just haven't quite, I'm so picky is the problem. I don't want the lights to be too tall, and I definitely don't want them to be too short. So what I think I'm gonna do, because the rack is at a great height right now, I want it to be shorter than the other rack, but I have a feeling it'll go up a hair. I bet you it's gonna go up at least 1 inch or so. So instead of putting the lights on top here, which is going to make it a little bit taller where the light mounts in comparison to the old one, I'm going to actually make the mount go underneath this bar. So I'm going to cut some tabs, drill some holes, make some mounts, and then to do this the right way, I'm going to have to flip this rack over, and then I'll put a level on each tab, and I'll tack it all together to make sure that each tab is level, because it's really easy to eyeball it, make it look close, and then once you actually burn it in, you realize that all your tabs are a little bit different. So I just think it's gonna be easier if I flip it over. Look so much better than the old lights. I definitely am into that look. I think that's gonna really wake up the look of the Land Rover overall. So now I need to finish mounting this last piece. There's a bar here that's gonna go on top, and yeah, you could say it's for protection of the lights, and it would protect the lights from branches and stuff, but in my head, I saw a bar going over the top and over the bottom of the lights just for looks. I think that it's gonna look really cool having like a finished piece up above. So now I need to take the tubing notcher. I need to locate where I want this. I'm just gonna hold it up, figure out where I like it, mark it, and then use the tubing notcher and notch it, and then I can start tacking some things together. We almost have a roof rack. I don't mind it. I think it looks pretty decent, actually. You know, it's I haven't seen one like it, that's for sure. But this is very close to what I was seeing in my head. I like the angles. I like the combination of rectangular tube and round tube. And I'm excited to weld it all up. But that is all gonna happen tomorrow. I am exhausted, it's very late. So I am going to break out the TIG torch tomorrow because I am way behind on practicing with steel TIG. So I'm gonna use this as an opportunity to practice my skills. I'll see you in the morning. Check it out, this rack is welded up. I am very excited about the way the rack looks. I think the rack looks great. My TIG welds, on the other hand, are not great. They're okay, they're not terrible, but I need more hours, and that's what the whole point of trying to apply a TIG torch to projects like this is to just try to get better, right? What's nice about this machine, I don't think I've showed this on this channel before, but if you want to mix between MIG and TIG, which I did, there are some spots that were hard to reach with the TIG torch, so I'd MIG weld, and you can go for MIG, and then you can just push the pedal, and it automatically goes right over to your TIG settings. It is so nice. So when I was hopping back and forth between the MIG torch and the TIG torch, it just automatically, you know, changes the cylinder that it's getting its gas from and everything. It's very convenient. The next step is taking the legs off of this, cleaning them up, and applying them to that. So I'm gonna cut these legs off. I'm gonna pull the disco in here. I think I'm gonna mount the legs on the disco first, and then I'm gonna try to get that rack up there by myself. It is not gonna be fun. I got it up there. It is up there. I like it. I think that it matches the look that I was going for on this rig. It's definitely different than anything I had seen for one of these Rovers before. And it's not too wide. I was kind of worried that if I made it too wide, it would just make it look way too big. I do wish that I would have made this bar a little bit lower to the lights, but you know, this is a big project. It's easy to make small mistakes and stuff here and there. If it bothers me enough, I could always cut it and make it a little lower, but I actually think it's fine. The big challenge now is gonna be mounting it to the Rover. I'm not exactly sure how I'm gonna accomplish that. You know, originally I wanted to use one of these jammies, and I think back here I could do something to make that work. But once I get up here, you know, it's ugly. I am not sure where I'm gonna go from here. I'm thinking I need to make something similar to this, but out of round tube, and then I can put a bend in it. I don't have any square dies for my tubing bender, so I'm stuck with round tube. I think that's the plan. I've got a whole bunch more 1¼ inch tube over here. I've got another 40 feet. So with 40 feet, I bet you I could come up with something. I spent the last 30 minutes running around the shop and trying to find what I have available to solve this problem. So I want to mount it to the rain gutter. I definitely don't want to drill holes to the roof if I don't have to, and I think I found a solution. Check this out. So I've got this rod. This is the only rod I had in the shop, and it just happens to fit down into that channel. And so I'm going to use it just like this. This is the old connection that I'm basically going to mimic, but we're going to do it with round tube instead. So I'm going to weld this onto the tube. We're going to have it bend in the tube. This is going to mount to that, so it'll be very similar to this. And then I've got these oversized nuts that these fit through, and those are going to bolt down to this. I hope you guys get it. I'm basically off the old rack. The only thing I'm going to reuse are these. I really like these. I think that this is clever. And, you know, if you don't have to engineer that, then don't. I guess we'll see once we get there. It would suck to design this whole thing, and then for whatever reason these don't work, and I have to also engineer past that, but we'll see when we get there. Right now, I think this is a pretty good plan, and I'm just going to start building stuff. What do you think? Yeah, I think it'll definitely hold. It's beefy enough. It's way beefier than the tube that was on it. That 1-inch square tube, super thin wall, was not near as strong as this is gonna be. And the steel that this is going into is a pinch weld. It's very meaty. I don't have any reason to think that this gutter is gonna fail. I looked at the top, it's not rusty or anything like that, so I think that's gonna be a really strong point of connection. Now, the moment of truth. Will this fit? I genuinely have not tested this yet. Oh yeah, that'll fit. I can make that work. So I'll be welding 2 nuts on there so I can send the bolts down and tighten that in. And I think that that's gonna look pretty decent. We got 5 more to do, but unfortunately I am shot once again. This project just keeps on going longer and longer. So I am gonna be out here tomorrow to wrap this thing up. Good morning. This rack will be freestanding today, I promise. But before we get started, let's chat for a minute. Yesterday was a really long day, probably 14 hours or so of filming and building, and I didn't talk about this. For those of you who are new, this is a fire retardant blanket. It's a welding blanket. I got it on Amazon. I'll put this in my Amazon shopping cart as well for those of you who are new. And what this does is it's going to protect my glass. Whenever you're MIG welding and you have all those little hot chunks of slag that pop off, they will stick to your glass almost instantly, and you'll never get them off because they melt in like right away. So I made 2 mistakes yesterday. I didn't talk about this because I was tired, and I didn't set it up right because I was tired. I definitely should have had this draped over the windshield as well. So today, the process that I'm going to use is I'm going to be working from the front to the back. So I have this side tacked on. I'm going to go and I'm going to tack on this side, and you're going to notice that I'm going to drape this welding blanket across the windshield and across the side. And a lot of times I will use masking tape for that kind of thing. Masking tape is nice because it's easy to pull back off and you can protect your paint and stuff like that. You don't want to weld. You can tack next to masking tape, but you don't want to weld next to masking tape because it is paper and you can catch things on fire. So this is one of those things where I'm sure there's a better product for this, but I use masking tape for stuff like this all the time. If you have a better option, go ahead and post it in the comments, but don't roast me. This is just one of those things where if you have it laying around, you use it, and this is absolutely a situation where I use it. The next issue we are facing is attachment. I don't like this. I like the clip. I think this is awesome. But originally I was just gonna basically tack some nuts on there, drill out the threads and use them as like a spacer that was gonna be welded to this. But it looks like garbage. So I'm gonna fabricate a little spacer from scratch. We're gonna put something on there that's gonna be, well, it's gonna be stronger first off because I'll be able to use more weld, but it's also gonna look a little bit better. So let's head over to the table, take a look what I have figured out. What I'm thinking is 1/4 inch. I got this chunk of scrap here, and I'm gonna drill some holes and cut it just the right width to where I can basically take those bolts, I can go down through the top, so it's gonna go down like this. So these are threaded. The bolt will thread through holes that I cut into here, and then this is going to attach to the rack and it'll cinch it all down together. So I've got 6 of them to make. I'm gonna do some layout real quick, start cutting and welding. It doesn't matter what the project is. Small details like this make a big difference on the overall craftsmanship of your finished product. So even though this is gonna take me a little bit of extra time to re-engineer my plan, I think that it's gonna look much more professional, and it's gonna be something that I can be a little bit more proud of. You know, when you're 10 feet away from a rack, it just looks like a rack. When you're 2 feet away from a rack, you can start to see all these little details and you get to really tell what kind of a craftsman put this project together. I always want to be known as someone who put in the extra time and effort to engineer things the right way and to make it look and function as good as I could at the time. Here it is. That is gonna be holding up my rooftop tent. I think I like it. I wanted something that is different, and I haven't seen a rack like this yet, at least not on a Discovery. So I like that it is unique. I think that it's gonna look really good with a rooftop tent on there, and it's gonna look even better when my future mods are done. I have got a whole lot of plans in store for this little Discovery. It's gonna be getting much bigger, and it's gonna have a whole bunch of accessories on it that are gonna match this rack really well. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is a 3-day project that turned into a 6-day project. I'm sure you guys have been there. So either way, I'm very excited to have it done, and I'm excited to get to the next step, which is paint. I will not be painting this in this video. As you guys know, I don't like to video myself painting, but I've had enough people ask about my painting process that in my next video, I'm gonna do a video that's just about how I paint things in the shop, and it's gonna be on this. So you'll be able to see this all painted, finished up, and on the Land Rover at the end of that video. If you like videos like this and you want to see more like them, make sure you give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I have a lot of how-to content on here. If you want to help support the channel, we do have a website, thedirtlifestyle.com. We have a Patreon page, link on there. We have t-shirts, hats, beanies, sweatshirts, stuff like that. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm @DirtLifestyleNate. We'll see you next time.